deck submissions for this too. So I'm going to talk through what this deck's here, doing a little bit before we start. So this deck is a 2-color aggressive deck, is a red-blue deck that's interested in playing kind of a tight curve of, kind of see the curve behind my picture here, of minions, and notably it's looking to power them up with the enchantments in this game. So enchantments in Mythgard occupy a specific lane, and then any units you put into that lane get a bonus. So Cairnhenge here gives the minion in it +1/+1. Demolition Speedway gives the minion +2 attack and overrun. So these combined with our plethora of really cheap units make them able to punch through for a little bit more damage in the early game. Also have a couple of giant stairway here at the top end, which gives +3/+3, which can turn like a 1-drop into a real threat, which is good. So when we start with Mythgard, I always like to point out some of the distinct differences between this game and Magic that I enjoy. So one of the things that this game does really well is similar to Magic, there's different colors in this game. In Mythgard's case, there are 6 different colors in Mythgard. However, instead of having lands in your deck to play your cards, I take any one of these cards in my hand and I burn it, which puts it back into my deck, and then I get a resource and a color for that card. The way combat in this game works is I get to play my unit out into any one of these 7 lanes. So I'm going to put him over here on the left on the first lane. I'm going to pass my turn. Because we're playing an aggressive deck, generally speaking, when you play an aggressive deck in Mythgard, you want to space your units on lanes 1, 4, and 7. And the reason for this is spacing your units on lanes 1, 4, and 7 makes them the most difficult to block or interact with, so they can't block any of our things with a single unit. So in Mythgard, when you attack, you can attack their face only if there's not a blocker. So this unit has to attack their 2/1 currently. I'm going to go ahead and burn a blue card now, and I drew a 2-color card. So this card's was a very good draw. So I can play this one out over here. And this card has an activated ability which deals 1 damage to anything. So I can use this to ping their 2/1, which then lets my 2/1 attack their face. Lanes 1, 4, and 7 are harder to block because units only attack or block the 3 lanes directly in front of them. So for example, because I've spaced these out on 1 and 7, my opponent is unable to deploy a single unit to the board to block both of my minions. This minion doesn't currently have any attack at its base level, but I can put an enchantment underneath it to allow it to attack through. Both these decks we're playing today are viewer submissions, just like when we play Magic. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this enchantment here. And now any minion I have on this 7th lane is now going to have +2 attack. This minion has a mechanic called Warded, so it cannot die outside of combat. So before I trade these here, I'm going to go ahead and burn their face. That is correct, Dude Light. I haven't burned a card yet for the turn, so you can burn 1 card per turn, and usually you want to burn a card every turn. So I'm going to go ahead and burn this thane. I don't know that I want to attack it here. I think I'm going to make them burn their attack. It doesn't really matter. You can see when I mouse over this, the interface tells me that both of these units are going to trade, and the reason why their 2-power guy is going to trade with my 2/3 is because it has a mechanic called Slayer, which means this does 1 extra damage when it's attacking other minions. Yes, there's no flood or screw in this game. Every card you draw can be burned for a resource. So you dictate how many resources you want to play out in a given game. How much money do you need to put in to craft 1 to 2 competitive decks? Depends on which decks you're building. So the more mythics that are in a deck, the more expensive it's going to be. The big red deck that I played a bunch of on stream, I think it has 3 or 4 mythics in it. You can even budget those out too. You can probably pick that deck up for like 30 packs or less, and packs are about $1 each. You might need to refresh since we came from Magic. The overlay should be working. If you take a peek at this game and you think it might be interesting, but you're not sure you want to dive into spending money on another game, one of the things this game does that is quite excellent is they have what they call their feature decks, where when you create an account in this game, there's a pool of 30 community-built decks that you have access to just by making an account on Mythgard. And you can play those decks completely for free without spending any money. You can play them in ranked, you can play them in casual, wherever you want to play them, you can play them. It says unicorn, but it looks like an elk. Please kill it. I think I'm going to go ahead and play Bragi over here, which is a 3/5, which turns into a 5/5 when I put it on the demolition speedway. He has an activated ability that once per turn, I can use him to draw a card and then put a card from my hand back into my deck. These 2 cards are actually pretty good, so I'm just going to throw the speedway back. This card has a mechanic called Energy. And Energy, I like to describe as similar to Planeswalker Loyalty in this game, where this card has a specific energy pool just for it, and then it has different mechanics that allow it to gain or lose energy depending on what you do with it. So its ability to draw a card, then put a card from my hand back into my deck gains it energy. It can give a minion Frenzy, or it can draw enchantments from my deck if it gets up to 4. The flavor of the universe in Mythgard is kind of cyberpunk, so there's like computers, but there's also magic and stuff like that. Energy is not tied to the unit's health. It's an individual counter for it. So you can see my Bragi here, when it rotates through, currently has 2 energy on it. So they played 2 units out over here to be able to have a pretty much a guaranteed blocker for Bragi. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to deploy my Wings of Abaddon to the middle. And this has Rush, so it can attack right away. And you can see here, again, it only gets attacked. The lane's in front of it. So because their minions are over here on the right and over here, this is currently unblockable or can't be blocked by any other stuff in play. I'm going to have this use its -2 energy to give this Frenzy, so it gets to attack twice here. So I get to hit them for 4 and hit them for 4 again. And then while this is on the demolition speedway, it has Overrun, which is similar to Trample. So I can attack their 1/1 here, and you can see it tells me on their face that they're going to take 3 Overrun damage. So I'm going to kill their unit, my unit's going to take 1, and their face is going to take 3. And now, because I'm an aggressive deck, my curve tends to stay kind of low. So I'm actually not going to burn either of these cards. So I don't really need more than like 4 or 5 resources. One thing to point out about the resource system in Mythgard in general, though, is you'll note this card has 2 red gems under it, and I've currently only burned 1 red card. So I actually can't play this card yet because I don't currently have a second red gem for it. So I will need to burn another red card before I can play this at some point. Yes, yeah, identifying your role in a given matchup and then placing your minions accordingly is super important. The depth of the combat system in this game is super impressive. I really like that this game gets it has the interactive element from Hearthstone's combat where minions can attack other minions and basically be removal spells, but you get the strategic blocking element that comes from Magic's combat system. I feel like they really took the 2 and married them together quite well. All right, so I think they're dead. So this has an activated ability where I can pay 2 and sack one of my other minions to give it immortal. And I drew this this 2-drop. So I get to play this out here and burn their face for 1 on its activated ability. Then I'll use another 2 resources to sacrifice this. So now this is invulnerable till end of turn. So I can hit this and trample over for 1. And then this still has Frenzy from last turn when Bragi gave it a bonus. And then Bragi has Overrun and we kill them exactly here. A lot of the mid-range decks in this game tend to have role assessments similar to Magic in that whether or not you're playing aggressively or defensively will vary match to match. This deck that we're playing right now, though, is an aggro deck, so most matchups we're going to be the beatdown. Hey, Queso Bag, thanks for the brand new Prime support. I appreciate that. Hope you're having an excellent Thursday wherever you are. I should check my missions, probably. Win 2 matches while burning purple cards. Yeah, we're going to burn purple cards the next deck, so that's fine. I have my chest. I like free stuff. Whee! So, I'm a whale in every game that I play, so I can't speak from personal experience. But other people have told me that the free-to-play in this game is very generous. I've just given them money and bought a bunch of packs. So I'm like 400 packs in. That being said, like that weekly chest I just opened gave me 2.5 packs worth of currency. And there's faction missions that you can work through that give you packs and wild cards. Collecting cards in this game is a mix of Hearthstone and Magic. There are wild cards, but you can also dust cards that you don't want. And more importantly, you can dust wild cards you don't need. So like, for example, I didn't need common and uncommon wild cards, so unlike Arena where they just rot on my account, I get to turn them into something useful. In addition to the colors giving a lot of deck building depth in this game, something that I haven't fully gotten into is each deck that you build has what's called a power associated with it. So my power here, for 2 resources once per turn, I can give the minion I target a temporary 1 attack boost. Your path in this game gives you the ability to it modifies your starting life total, gives you some kind of static effect, and then gives you a pursuit bonus, which is a bonus when you're on the draw, which again I really like because one of the big problems Magic has as a game is being on the play is a huge advantage. So the paths in this game seek to balance that advantage out a little bit by giving you some kind of bonus. I played the enchantment on the first turn, Philly. This is a 1-cost enchantment. And then my opponent here played a little bit of interaction. They returned an enchantment to the top of my deck, and then it bounced the minion that was in it. My opponent and I are actually playing the same path and the same power, but it looks like the rest of their deck's a bit different than mine. So to burn the trapezists here, I don't really gain anything by attacking this in. Like if I attack, theirs takes 3, mine takes 2, and the next turn they could trade them, but I don't really want them to trade them. So I think I'm going to go ahead and play Wings of Abaddon over here and smack their face for 4 and then just pass the turn here. Yeah, Rewind Hex is super strong against this enchantment aggro deck. It 1-for-1s me and tempos me. Super, super powerful card. One of the things that's really sweet about this game, this is something we talk about in Magic a lot, is if you've watched me play mid-range deck in Magic, you've probably heard me refer to the wrong half problem before. And basically that refers to drawing the wrong mix of interaction in your mid-range or control deck. And the way the resource system in this game works, there's a lot less of that issue because when your card's not good, you can just burn it. Now, occasionally you will redraw a card that you've burned and then it's still not good, but a lot of the time the games are short enough that like that's not something that comes up. Green is not the best color in this game. It's really weird. In fact, their developers had posted stats at one point that showed the win rates of different color combinations. They were pretty well balanced around like 48 to 50% or so. Like 50% plus or minus.
Fire and stone.
I think we're kind of dead at this point. Is there a good reason to not be able to re-burn a card after redrawing it? Yeah, just so you can't burn the same cards endlessly, I'd assume. Yeah, you can only burn each card once. Something I haven't shown yet, if you, on the right side over here, there's an in-game deck tracker, because this game is excellent software. And you can see for Cairnhenge, there are 3 of them in my deck, and 2 of them are orange, which means I've already burned 2 of them. I've burned 1 thane, I've burned 1 trapezist. I also click over here and see my opponent's deck, and it'll show me which cards they've burned back into their deck. Yeah, as far as this goes, I think we're pretty dead here. They have a 6/6 just gonna eat my thing, and I can't get through here either. If you have burned 2 of the 3 and draw the 3rd one, it's always correct. Yes, it tracks which, when you burn a card, it inserts it randomly back into your deck. Huh? So I think I want to burn the henge here and play a henge on 1 rather than the pup. So I drew an extra card there. The static ability on Rainbow's End says at the start of my turn, if the top card of my deck is an enchantment, I draw it for free. So the top card of my deck was Demolition Speedway there, so we got to draw it. Hey, they have a 2/1, which is perfect, because I have a Fire Eater now. Pew! His hand's a little clunky. This is probably more enchantments than we want, but we can burn some of them back off into the deck here. We actually kind of want to draw a red card because I need a second red gem to deploy Panic Raider here. Panic Raider is one of my favorite cards in this game. It's a 3-drop that is a 2/2, and every time it hits my opponent, I get to draw a card, and it gets smaller. So it'll hit them, it'll turn into a 1/1, we'll draw a card. You'll notice my units are hovering, and then they stop hovering once I've used them fully. So again, the interface is a ton of really good little reminders, letting you know if there's something you have to do or not. This is a pretty strong card. While this is occupied, the enchantments in the opposing 3 lanes are suppressed, which means they don't have text. So this henge is basically about to get turned off. I think I'm going to go ahead and burn the speedway here. And I'm going to go ahead and attack for 1 here, and then play wings out over here and attack for 4. And then this sets me up next turn to be able to play giant stairway over here and attack for 7. Yeah, I agree with that, Sidna. It seems like I have a lot of blue cards that I want to burn, but I also want a lot of red gems. It feels like what my experience has been so far. So they deployed a 4/4 over here, but that doesn't block this lane all the way on the left. So I can deploy my giant stairway here, smack them for 7, and then have this hit them for 1, and they're down to 4 now. This can technically attack, but again, it doesn't have any power anyways. It would have to attack into their 4/4, which is not great. Yeah, I played a non-enchantment based blue-red aggro deck before, but this is my first time playing the enchantment based one. Okay, Ringmaster gives all their minions rush.
Reporting.
So they should be dead here, right? Oh no, they get to kill that, right? I think they're still dead. Yeah, because they're at 6, so I can play trapezists here, which is a 5/5 because of the enchantments. That puts them to 1, and then Fire Eater comes in and pokes them. Give you a poke. My opponent really struggled to develop their early game plays that game, and then the fact that they took their turn 3 off to deploy this enchantment that really didn't impact the board allowed us to get ahead pretty quickly there. Hero power is also lethal, yep. Good call. This is pure philosophy of fire, the face of the place. Yep. Yeah, this deck that we're playing top aided one of the recent, like, I think they had like 60 or 70 people in a community run tournament. I think this is like the premier aggro deck of the format. This is on mobile, Android and iOS. You can play it on Windows, Linux, and OS X on Steam. You can also play it in your web browser without installing anything, which is great. This, in addition to the actual gameplay for this being very engaging, the software quality is probably one of the best card game softwares I've ever used. They have a very detailed roadmap on their website, and one of the things they're planning to have done for December next month is the first draft of their in-client tournament system, which sounds great. Nobody hasn't been able to play Arena because he has a Chromebook. He's playing Mythgard now because he can do it in a web browser. Yeah. Yep. All the software quality of Artifact without the artifact part of Artifact. Yep. Yeah, Artifact's probably the one thing that comes close. And like, that had a few more features in it than this one did because they have a bigger team, but once they get their roadmap done for this, it's going to be a lot. How is the deck editing or collection management? The deck editing collection management I would describe as functional. I think that's probably one of the places the interface could use the most work. And one of the reasons why I'm sure it's a little bit clunky is they currently have the same interface on mobile and desktop. But I hope at some point one of the things I would really like is if we could have a pile view like I'm used to in Magic. There is a thing here behind me where you can see the curve, but I'm as a more visual person, I would prefer a more formal pile view for sure. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think the Warhammer game's gonna end up going anywhere, Mark. This has definitely replaced Warhammer as my go-to non-Magic game of choice that includes a mobile client. I also think to a degree, the Warhammer game was like a victim of how different it was. Like I enjoyed the fact that the Warhammer gameplay was different, but at the end of the day, I think people want something that's a little bit familiar, and I think this game really strikes a nice balance of being unique and innovative while also feeling very familiar to the people coming from other games. Yeah, probably should. Well, that's a little unfortunate. So they've put a thing down across from me. Oh, is this the person we lost to a second ago? I don't remember who their name was, but they were playing a green enchantment deck. Yeah, the Warhammer card game was the one with things that spun around in circles. Yeah, the last time we played them, they popped up and said... Yeah, that's brutal. Alright, so I guess I'm burning a red card here so we can play Panic Raider. The setup in this deck definitely feels pretty awkward, where like we want to be burning these enchantments, but like the enchantments aren't giving us the colors that we need for our deck, basically.
Is that all you've got?
So this is a 5/4 that gets +1/+1 whenever we make a minion. So I think I'm gonna burn a demolition speedway here. And then I'm going to put Cairnhenge over here. And I'm going to go ahead and attack them, because now this can live to draw another card, which is sweet. And I think I'm going to deploy Demolition Speedway down the center here. This is big enough that the gigantomachia here is going to be able to clear it away, which is nice.
Do you seek wisdom?
And that's perfect. So this'll let me banish both their things in play here, which is great for us. Hey, Chris, thanks for the Prime support. Hope you're having an excellent day wherever you are. Thanks for keeping me employed this month with that. So this'll banish both of their things. This'll hit them for 1 and we'll draw a card. So I want a third red this turn, I think. So I'm going to play the pup here. I'm going to play the fire eater in the middle, I think. And then play my oak out over here. What's coverage, Marty? How does that work? That's so brutal. I feel like their deck is just like metagame to beat ours. Like I said, our deck, the deck that we're playing is like one of the better stock tier 1 decks in the format. It's like a pile of rewind hex. I don't know that we can ever beat that. Feels bad, man. Alright, let's try and knock you into this person again. Yeah, we played the same person twice. Like, we're 2-0 except for playing against their deck that's trying to beat ours. I think playing some amount of enchantment hate is fine. I think there's enough enchantments in most of the good decks that playing some amount of enchantment hate is super reasonable. Alright, so we're on the play again. That's pretty good. Gonna burn the extra henge here. We've also been pretty unfortunate that we keep having like multiple enchantments in our opener when really we want like 2 at most. Do I still play Dota Underlords? No, the more I played that game, the less interesting it became. The replayability factor felt super low. So I'm going to burn a red card because I want a Panic Raider on 3. I'm going to play Thane here. So that way next turn I can have this to kill this and then Panic Raider can smack them. My opponent's power allows them to draw an extra card and discard a card. So generally you see that inside of reanimator strategies. So I'm expecting my opponent's deck to be flooping this 6/6 back into play at some point. Because Slayer only increases damage that's dealt. So if you're not dealing damage, it has nothing to increase. Feels bad, man. So if I kill this, it gets replaced by the bottom minion in their boneyard. And the bottom minion of their boneyard is a 6/6 that gains them life and draws them cards. So I guess the game plan here is pivot away from this lane. And we'll run down here to the right. I probably, when I deployed this, I think I deployed it on the wrong lane, and I should have deployed it here so that way I could have slid over more easily. Yeah, but that's spending their turn to do that, Ribson. So like they don't have an attack with the 6/6 this turn, which is ideal. This deck feels really mediocre. I don't know that we're gonna spend a lot of time playing this one. Of like all the things that I've played in Mythgard, this feels like the least interesting deck that I've played. The gameplay patterns are pretty linear, and like the counterplay doesn't feel like it's very good. All right, so I can burn the pup. And it's not even about power level so much as it's just like these games haven't been super interesting in my opinion. Like I feel like we're just killing people or getting killed. And that's different than a lot of the other games. Yeah, it's not interactive and repetitive. Yeah, I mean it's like its goal of like if the game's going this deck's way, it's not trying to be interactive, which is very different than a lot of the decks I've played in Mythgard. Mythgard games, especially compared to Magic, tend to be super interactive.
Yes, brilliant.
Well, shoot. So these will trade to the Slayer. And like this is what happens like when I play against this deck and we beat it, this is what happens too. Like you'll just have like 2 or 3 cards in your hand and it just doesn't, you can't do anything with them because you have a bunch of enchantments and you have no gas. Do you think that it is due to Mythgard forcing more interaction by design or simply because people have not had enough time to develop linear decks? I don't know, dude. Like, I think I guess I do have an opinion on that. The very design of this as a game on a fundamental level encourages more interactive games than Magic does. I think that's just true. I just feel like we can't win anymore, right? Like, this is going to bring back a necromantic, and that necromantic's going to bring back the beast. I think adding a priority system and a bunch of instants to this game would be an incredible mistake on their part. Hot take. Instants kind of suck sometimes. And it's therapeutic to not have to deal with them. they're just gonna slide this over. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm gonna be done with this one. I don't know. This deck came in second at the tournament, and then it was like pretty popular on the ladder, and a lot of people like expecting it, and like even the games where we're winning, I feel like I'm just not enjoying them. I'm sure it's probably fine if people like don't really want to beat you, but the awkwardness of like having all these enchantments and then wanting to burn them but needing more red was super awkward too. Like, we definitely experienced in those games what other people have experienced when we've played against this deck, which is like they end up with a bunch of enchantments and nothing to do with them, which is super medium. So, yeah, this deck overall is a bit of a miss for me. I'm sure it's fine in terms of power level, but in terms of the gameplay it has, I wasn't a big fan. All right. What do we got next? Red, purple, aggro. I need to run to the bathroom really quick before we dive into this next one, so I'm going to go ahead and roll a quick ad break. While I do that, when we get back, we're going to play this other viewer submission here, and if we have time after this one, maybe we'll play one